Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul, and in this RedGamingTech.com video, we're going to be discussing as well as analysing tech news which, as usual, has popped up the past 24 or so hours. And we're going to be starting this video out with AMD, specifically news on the third generation threadripper parts. The Artic Freezer 50 CPU cooler has officially been released by, well, Artic, and there is a very interesting little note on the box itself. It states that it is designed to handle CPUs up to 64 cores, which of course does indirectly indicate that AMD are planning to release up to 64 core threadrippers. In similar news, we also have the name of the 24 core derivative of the third generation threadripper, and it is, drumroll please, the 3960X. Next up, we have an exclusive for the PlayStation 5 as well as the next generation Xbox. This is also an article, so if you do prefer the written word, you can find it, of course, linked in the description of this very video. And recently, Bits and Chips on his English Twitter account, I'll link it, of course, in the description of this video, tweeted that the PS5 CPU would be based on a Zen 2 Plus architecture. But obviously saying Zen 2 Plus is kind of ambiguous. Like, what does that mean? Does it mean that it has some of Zen 3 features or what? Well, I decided to reach out to him to ask if he could clarify what he meant, and he gave me a lot of information regarding the CPU, the GPU, including ray tracing capabilities, and several other things as well. So full credit to him. In case anyone's wondering, I did ask him if he would mind if I ran the story, because as many of you know, he does run his own website, but apparently that's not his focus at the moment. He's concerned about other hobbies. So he said that I could run this story, so thanks very much to him. However, all of this information is his, it's not mine. So starting out with the CPU side of the equation, Zen 2 Plus means that it has some enhancements, but it's not Zen 3 based. Basically, these CPUs are optimized to function under lower power conditions, which makes sense given it's a console. So lower thermals, and just there's also some tweaks allegedly with the cache as well. Apparently it's going to have lower latency. And basically this design is specifically created for consoles. From what I gather, from what he's told me with his sources, the CPU inside the PS5 as well as the next generation Xbox is basically identical, although I'm not certain what the clock frequencies are between the two systems. So for example, the PS5 may have, let's say, 100 or 200 MHz advantage or disadvantage over the next generation Xbox. I was also told that the APU inside the consoles is designed using a, quote, chiplet approach. So for those who don't know what a chiplet is, I'm going to very briefly go over it, although most of you probably do know this if you've been watching the channel. So let's say you're building the PS4's APU. Well, obviously that has 8 CPU cores, a whole bunch of GPU cores, memory controllers, I/O controllers, and blah blah blah. And all of that together is in one single piece of silicon. AMD recently, with their CPUs anyway, has been taking the chiplet approach. So basically you build smaller components and then those components come together in a Lego-like fashion to form a larger whole. For example, the Ryzen 3000 series of CPUs from AMD, the 3950X, has 16 CPU cores, which is comprised of 2 CPU chiplets. Each of those chiplets contains 8 CPU cores, and then a third die which is for I/O. This is allegedly going to help with both yields as well as manufacturing requirements for both companies. In other words, both Samsung and TSMC, that's what I was told, can help produce chips. I'm not quite sure how that works, because typically when a CPU or a GPU or whatever is created, it's done so with a specific factory or manufacturer in mind. So for example, Intel just can't quite easily go over to, let's say, Samsung or TSMC and say, hey, could you help manufacture this for us? That it doesn't work like that. The CPU is specifically architected around a specific process, a specific node. So I'm not quite sure how that's divvied up, and unfortunately Bits and Chips did not elaborate exactly what he meant by that. So it's possible, for example, that we will see Samsung manufacture stuff for Microsoft, whereas TSMC may manufacture it for Sony, but perhaps there's a common component that will be used for both, or maybe one fab will be used, let's say, for the I/O controller or what have you. I'm not exactly certain, so I'm going to be very curious exactly what he meant by that. I was also told that in regards to the ray tracing capabilities of both consoles, Microsoft Xbox is actually slightly ahead of the PlayStation, although specifics are still quite early because obviously the consoles are not final yet and developers are still kind of getting their head around both of them. Once again, I don't know what bits and chips sources are for this information. I definitely feel that there will be some slight differences on the GPU for both consoles. After all, there has been, let's say, with the PS4 and the previous generation Xbox systems. But it's going to be very curious to me what actually we see in terms of performance difference between the consoles. I'm hearing that one manufacturer is more powerful, then someone else refutes that and says that no, the other manufacturer is more powerful. So whether it's the PS5 or the next generation Xbox, I think, to be honest with you, both systems are going to be quite close to one another. If you just look at what's been revealed for both systems, we know that both are going to be using a Zen 2 based architecture, both have 8 processor cores, both use an RDNA based GPU. They both even have a next-generation SSD. Sony and Microsoft have not provided exact read-write figures, for example. Sony have given a demo to investors using Spider-Man on the PS4 on a PS5 development kit. Microsoft, on the other hand, have said it's 40 times faster, roughly, than the Xbox One X. But once again, that is a very kind of round figure, and it doesn't account for stuff like small read-writes, random read-writes, larger files, and just, that type of stuff. So it's going to be very interesting exactly what these drives are capable of. And in the last couple of pieces of news for today, we're going to be discussing Intel, the first of which is news regarding the architecture of what actually Rocket Lake is. So this is an exclusive, and it's some information that I received yesterday anonymously, so we'll go into that in just a second. As a quick reminder though, of course, we are at the moment on the Coffee Lake refresh with 8 cores, 16 threads. Next year, we will see Comet Lake with 10 cores, 20 threads, although it does retain the Skylake architecture. But we have seen for some time, Rocket Lake. But it still says 10 cores, 20 threads. Now, a lot of people have thought that this is, once again, a Skylake architecture-based CPU. But if you look at what it would be facing from AMD, it doesn't necessarily make sense for it to be Skylake-based. We've also seen some reports that it's using Generation 12 graphics, which... So, yesterday I received an email from someone who claims to have information that Intel's Rocket Lake processors are actually a backport of Cove. So that's basically what I was told, that Rocket Lake is going to be based upon the Cove architecture. So the first thing I did when I received this information was try to email the person back to ask some follow-up questions. And the email sent, but then a few moments later bounced back because the person had spoofed the email address. So obviously I can't ask follow-up questions, which is something that I would genuinely like to do when a source does email me something or tells me something, or even if it's a Twitter DM, for example. DMs are open. So, unfortunately, I can't say for certain whether this person was just trolling and giving wrong information. This is not a source that I've used in the past. In the past, I have leaked several things regarding Comet Lake, and of course lots of stuff from AMD as well. With Comet Lake, I did state way back in the day that it was going to be 10 cores, 20 threads, and some other bits and pieces, which of course turned out to be accurate. But that source was not this source, so this source is definitely new, but it kind of makes sense for it to be a non-Skylake architecture, to be honest, because I just don't see how Intel can compete with a Skylake-based architecture with only 10 processor cores, even if they increase the clock frequencies to, let's say, 5.2, 5.3 GHz on cores, which is at best debatable that they could do that. They wouldn't have a leg to stand on against a Zen 3 or even a Zen 4 based CPU from AMD, which we can presume is going to have at the very least 16 CPU cores for the mainstream. It just doesn't make any sense, because obviously at that point AMD would have had let's say 10% IPC gains for Zen 3. I was told it's at least 8%, so let's say 10%. And then presumably Zen 4 is going to be even more than that. Furthermore, this does follow hot on the heels of Intel denying that they will be skipping 10nm CPUs for the desktop. Website hardwarelux.de a couple of days ago said that we would see Comet Lake S launching in 2020, Rocket Lake on the 14nm process, and they also believe that it has Generation 12 graphics launching in 2021. And then we would see Meteor Lake on the 7nm process, and that will be launching in 2022. But Intel have denied this statement and have said that they will actually be shipping 14nm CPUs, 10nm CPUs for the desktop, although they've specifically said desktop products. They've not actually stated what type of CPUs they would be. Also, Raja Koduri, which was pointed out by Tom's Hardware earlier this year, did actually state that we would be seeing high-performance desktop CPUs on 10nm, but he didn't actually give any insight into what specific CPUs they would be. And the last piece of news today concerns Intel and the release date of their XE line of discrete graphics cards. Around 5-6 days ago, I did actually release an exclusive that Intel were planning to launch their GPUs in June. And this actually was from a reliable source, and they had said that the tease from Raja Koduri, where it said Think XE and then June 2020, was actually the release date of the GPUs. Now, DigiTimes, according to their sources, which I'm assuming are different to mine from what I can tell, they've actually said that we will be seeing the GPUs hit store shelves around the midpoint of next year, which of course seems to indicate that June is actually the release date of these A quote from the DigiTimes says regarding Intel's strategy with its GPUs, instead of purely targeting the gaming market, Intel is set to combine the new GPUs with its CPUs to create a competitive platform in a bid to pursue business opportunities from the data center, AI, machine learning applications, and such a move is expected to directly affect Nvidia, which have been pushing its AI GPU platform into the data center market. The source is noted. Once again, this is a direct quote from DigiTimes. And apparently these GPUs will be based, once again, on the Generation 12 architecture, and they will sport GDDR6 memory. Also, going back to a leak that we saw recently from the drivers, I've discussed this a couple of times before, the highest end graphics SKU that we know about is referred to in drivers, which once again have been pulled down from Intel's website, IDG2HP512. The DG obviously could refer to discrete graphics, and HP, high power or high performance. I'm going to assume it means high performance. And 512 is almost certainly the number of execution units on the GPU. Each execution unit can handle 16 FP32 instructions per clock, although we are using Generation 11 here to get these figures. And this also means we can have 32 FP16 instructions per clock. That basically means half precision. And each execution unit houses 2 ALUs. So what you can essentially do here is get some idea of how the next generation GPUs from Intel will perform. Once again, given we don't know the clock frequencies, it's difficult to get an exact measurement, but it's not too difficult to assume that we will see a GPU of 9 teraflops plus, assuming a clock frequency of around 1100, 1200 megahertz. Anyway, with any luck, you've enjoyed the video. If you did, then like, share, comment and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.